Story 1. Meet Your Second Wife is absolutely incredible. The premise, acting, and jokes all hit perfectly. Story 2. One that I have always remembered is Phil Hartman as Bill Clinton going for a jog and ending up in a McDonald's. When one of the United States Secret Service mentions how they were cautioned by Mrs. Clinton not to let Bill take any detours, Bill says, "Jim, let me tell you something. There are going to be a whole bunch of things we do not tell Mrs. Clinton. Fast food is the least of our worries." This was a joke made at the start of his presidency, before the next 8 years. Story 3. The alien abduction sketches, especially the one with Ryan Gosling trying hard not to break. Kate McKinnon is very funny in these. Story 4. I rewatch many on a semi-regular basis. Cecily as Janine Pierrot on Weekend Update. David Pumpkins. The most recent Ryan Gosling episode. Beavis and Butthead. The Breakup, The Dead Father. Brothers, Best is with Patrick Warburton. Science Room. Celebrity Jeopardy. Decaf Coffee with Chris Farley. Gemma Skits with Cecily and The Rock. Cowbell. Jeffries with Will Ferrell and Sean Hayes. Puppet Class with Seth MacFarlane. Cecily Bangs' Old Man Bill Hader. The Californians. Too many to name a favorite, but I'm a firm believer Cecily is in the top 5 cast members of all time. Story 5. Sweaty Balls with Anna Gasteyer and Molly Shannon with Alec Baldwin. The total national public radio-style quiet discussion is hilarious. Story 6. Any of the negative ones, I love Rachel Dratch, or the Lawrence Welk Show ones, Kristen Wiig is hilarious as Denise. Story 7. What's up with that? So chaotic and weird. It makes me laugh so hard. Especially Jason Sudeikis dancing. Story 8. Synchronized swimming with Martin Short, Harry Shearer, and Christopher Guest. Love it and still quote it all the time. "Hey you, I know you is usually my go-to. That or Martin's I Don't Swim. Story 9. The funeral one with Ben Affleck, Greg Polino's great Uncle Bailey. Chopping broccoli. Celebrity Jeopardy. Most Evil Villain Contest with Dwayne Johnson. The Lonely Island Content. Story 10. Succinctly Speaking, starring Tarzan, Tonto, and Philip Hartman as Frankenstein. Hartman's break in that moment will always remain my favorite Saturday Night Live moment. Story 11. Man, I don't know how it hasn't been mentioned, but Dear Sister. What you say? There's an argument to be made, not by me but by others, that it significantly shaped modern comedy. Story 12. Anytime Colin Jost and Michael Che are writing highly inappropriate jokes for each other's teleprompters. Story 13. Bill Burr and the commercials for Buffalo Wild Wings and Samuel Adams. Also the Dunkin' commercial. Special mention, Bill Hader as a game show host, notably What Is That Name? Story 14. Dana Carvey's Tom Brokaw filming pre-taped segments so he can go on vacation. Story 15. Martin Short's defensive lawyer on 60 Minutes. I know that. Don't you think I know that? It's so arrogant of you to think I don't know that. Story 16. Landshark, who is it? Candygram. Dan Aykroyd playing Julia Childs. Tina Fey playing a tiny woman in a bar with big dreams. And Kristen Wiig playing the lady with the little hands. Plus Jamie Foxx on an entirely different unrelated show playing Wanda. Story 17. I love Saturday Night Live and still watch it religiously. It bummed me out when I heard the clown skit with Louis C.K. was a Tig Notaro ripoff because I thought it was hilarious. Other than that, Owen Wilson recording for the new Cars movie. Austin Butler on The Phrase That Pays. Charlie Day in The Seinfeld Apartment. Adam Driver in Career Day. Adam Driver in Undercover Boss. Star Killer Base, the first one. Will Ferrell Ventriloquist. Adam Sandler Rectix. Beck Bennett Undercover Office Potty. Fred Armisen dancing in the middle of the street. Ariana Grande Castrani. And obviously, more cowbell. These are probably not anyone's favorites, but they're mine when I look up Saturday Night Live clips. Story 18. I can't find it anywhere, but there was a skit where James Bond had to call all his sexual partners to inform them of the more than 100 sexually transmitted diseases he had. At some point, he has to call Batman. Robin answers the bat phone, but he cannot go anywhere. James has to talk to Batman as well. Story 19, Bad Idea Jeans. The Sarah Lee skit with Harry Styles. If he wants to keep acting, he should consider comedy. There is a clownish side to him that could really shine in the right movie. Anytime Kate McKinnon or Leslie Jones were in something, those were gems. Story 20, Black Jeopardy with Thomas Hanks is excellent. The fake Lexus commercial where the man surprises his wife with a new car at Christmas is great as well. She becomes upset because he is unemployed and they cannot afford it. Story 21, What is that? There are many great skits with excellent characters and performances, so I don't have a favorite. The skit I am referencing features Steve Martin and Bill Murray on stage staring past the camera, repeating, "What is that?" with different inflections and postures. Occasionally, it is punctuated with, "I know what that is." What is that? It has a simple premise and gets laughs. It demonstrates the performer's skill in keeping the audience engaged without going overboard. It is essentially them filling time while the crew changes sets. Story 22. The Census with Christopher Walken and Tim Meadows is by far my favorite ever. I cannot find it on YouTube, but here it is from the Saturday Night Live subreddit. Story 23. Specifically, the Black Jeopardy with Tom Hanks. The toughest part about writing sketch comedy is sticking the landing at the end, and this one does that better than any sketch. Story 24. Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley trying out as Chippendales dancers. Story 25. Some of my favorites were already mentioned, but one set of sketches I don't hear people talk about that are great are Matt Schaefer's, especially with Jennifer Lopez. Story 26. The ones where Keenan is a convict and part of a scared straight program. When he threatens the teens, he always describes a movie. The recent Beavis and Butthead episode with Ryan Gosling. World's Most Evil Invention. The one where Will Forte is a registered sex offender and has to introduce himself to the neighbor on Halloween. Gus Chiggins, the prospector. Story 27. Chris Farley as a motivational speaker who lives in a van down by the river. Hot Tub with Eddie Murphy. Story 28. Love Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer. Phil Hartman was and still is one of the most brilliant minds that came from Saturday Night Live. We will miss him forever. Story 29. A news and crime show where Shaggy and Scooby-Doo are facing charges for meddling across state lines in the first degree. It was sometime in the early 2000s. My high school friend and I were very intoxicated and laughed uncontrollably. I found the transcript online years ago but lost it. It was very funny. Story 30. I have two. Eddie Murphy in Whiteface and Dysfunctional Family Feud with Phil Hartman and Christian Slater as the Saturday Night Live host. Story 31. The Cork Soakers. Maybe the funniest thing I have ever seen anywhere. The Turtle Boy. For that matter, almost anything Steve Martin ever did on Saturday Night Live. Toonces, the Driving Cat. I have no idea why I can watch Toonces all day, every day. Babies in Makeup. Outrageous, bizarre, and hilarious. Mr. Bill. Gumby, damn it. Eddie Murphy in Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. Story 32. Dana Carvey as Ross Perot and Phil Hartman as Admiral Stockdale go driving. Story 33. Dennis Miller plays an angel who is asked questions by a newcomer to heaven about the unusual things he knows. It might not even be on YouTube. Story 34. Baby Names with Nicolas Cage. Story 35. Guy who played Mr. Belvedere Fan Club. Farley, Hanks, Tim Meadows, but of course the guy who absolutely ran away with it was Phil Hartman. Story 36. Showing my age here, but when Eddie Murphy became a white man, it was so funny. I also love the Californians, Debbie Downer, and the Barry Gibb Talk Show. Story 37. Weekend Update with Dan and Jane, Mr. Bill, Sofa King, Celebrity Jeopardy, and Scottish Hooligans Weekly. Story 38. The skit that lives rent-free in my mind to this day features Will Ferrell, Tim Meadows, and Sherry O'Terry as morning show hosts. Their teleprompter suddenly stops working, and they become so lost without it that they quickly devolve into tribal savages in the style of Lord of the Flies. Story 39. Weekend Update has been good for decades. The sketch with Will Ferrell as the German character using a tiny cell phone is particularly memorable. Story 40. It isn't the funniest, But my favorite and most memorable is Madeline Kahn and Gilda in Tab and Vodka. The two of them are acting their hearts out. Story 41. The Aliens 2 skit most of you have never seen. Weaver, hold on a second, proceeds to take off her jumpsuit for no reason. Phil Hartman is Hicks. Oh, come on, Ripley. We have all seen you in your underwear. Story 42. Who is more grizzled? Garth Brooks disappears into that codger. Story 43. There are many classic moments from the 1990s that I love, but most recently, the Bad Bunny episode with the Latina mother and aunt or the Shrek script is very funny. Story 44. Sprockets. Mike Myers as the ultra-pretentious Dieter was an absolute riot. Touch my monkey. Love him. Story 45. Will Ferrell's dysfunctional family dinner really hit home with me. My first car, and the one I had when the sketch happened, was a Dodge Stratus. It really was a flex to drive one. Story 46. Melissa McCarthy, ranch dressing. Will Ferrell wearing the American flag Speedo. Context is important here. It was sometime after September 11, 2001, and demonstrating your patriotism was something everyone did, regardless of Democrat or Republican. Everyone wore something with an American flag. Going to that extreme gave everyone something to laugh about after months of mourning. Technically, it was not a skit but Will Ferrell's audition tape, featuring the businessman who plays with toys like a cat. Story 47. Steve Martin and Bill Murray as Hicks amazed by something off screen, presumably an alien spaceship. What the hell is that thing? Well, what the hell is it? Don't put your lips on it. It seemed improvisational and hilarious. Story 48. Dan Aykroyd as a toy manufacturer. Story 49. It's so dumb, but it works so well. The old skit where Belushi is taking English lessons and the teacher has a heart attack and falls out of his chair, so Belushi does the exact same thing to mimic him. That's it. That's the skit. Simple, dumb, and funny. Story 50. Jingleheimer Junction. I have only watched this one on YouTube, but it is so funny. All the pieces in place work together to make comedy gold. Story 51. The cold opening Will Ferrell did as George W. Bush is oddly hard to find online. The whole bit about the axis of evil, Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Story 52. Hallelujah followed by the bubble. Story 53. A very random one I revisit all the time is the mattress store sketch with Rami Malek and Aidy Bryant, my most valuable player. It never fails to make me wheeze. Story 54. This is a smile that says, I got a fish in my mouth, and I am going to keep it in there. Story 55. Dr. Beeman's office. And it is not particularly close. Story 56. People have mentioned most of my favorites, but this sketch always amazes me. Story 57. Will Ferrell was a contestant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he stopped playing after winning the $100 question. Story 58. George Washington has a dream. A great nation setting its own laws, a land of the free, choosing its own weights and measures. It is great all the way through, including the follow-up skits, which always make me laugh. What will we call that? Nothing. How many liters are in a gallon, sir? Nobody knows. And in football, do we kick the ball, sir? No, we throw it with our hands. Story 59. We cannot keep playing if you do not let go of the pickle. That is what your mother said last night. Story 60. Mine is like a boss. It was released on April 5, 2009, which happened to be my 19th birthday, the legal drinking age in my country. My friends and I went out on the town, got all banged up, and took a cab back to one of my friends' houses. Another friend of mine was obsessed with Saturday Night Live, so he recorded that night's episode, and it just so happened to be the debut night of that particular Lonely Island track. We laughed and had an excellent time, and that's why Like a Boss will always be my favorite Saturday Night Live skit. Story 61, hard to choose, to be honest. Celebrity Jeopardy, most digital shorts, Californians, Scared Straight, Close Encounters, etc. The most recent one I like is the parking lot altercation with Martin Short. Haha. Story 62. Every Saturday Night Live skit. Watching Adam Hayter make so many people break character, including himself, with his increasingly specific descriptions of the hottest trends always made me laugh. Story 63. Will Ferrell as Brandon's dad. Starts off as, "Hey Brandon, get off the shed, buddy," and escalates to, "I will chain you to a pipe in the basement if you don't get off that shed." Story 64. The most evil invention in the world competition with The Rock is such a haymaker of a skit. The White Castle button is garbage, but the rest is 10 out of 10. Nate Bargatze as the white chef in a soul food competition is so effortlessly funny. Story 65. So much great material from the classic days through their different eras. But I cannot believe I am the first one here to mention Papyrus. That sketch transcends comedy and becomes pure art. Story 66. The Raging Queen is a spoof of a Charles Dickens novel written and starring Monty Python member Michael Palin as Miles Copperweight aboard a very gay 19th century British Navy ship. John Belushi as Captain Ned was hilarious. One of the longest skits ever on Saturday Night Live. It actually played over 2 weeks, with the first episode revolving around Miles' abuse by his benefactor, Dan Aykroyd. We were forced to read Dickens novels in grade school by strict Catholic nuns. So the skit resonated with me as I recalled my hapless youth suffering their appalling, humiliating, awful, and boring abuse. Story 67. Ben Stiller and Will Ferrell, the H is O. Stiller sees Glenn Fry Ferrell at a bar and decides he is going to take him home. Hilarity ensues. Tomorrow morning, when I wake up, I am going to have Glenn Frey's stank all over me. Very obscure skit. But man, what an absolute gem. Story 68. Most of the best have been mentioned, but a few that I love that have been missed are Garth and Kat on Weekend Update, and Midday News with Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Shane Gillis. Story 69. The show is a children's program where the characters wear shirts with letters. They nearly spell a bad word during the entire skit. Story 70. I have a lot I really like, but occasionally I will see a short of the Don't Fear the Reaper skit and it still makes me wheeze. Story 71. Point and Counterpoint with Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd. It was a skit in which they debated a topic based on a recent news event. They started out being polite to one another, but it always degenerated into personal attacks. It was a funny skit on its own, but what really made it funny to me was a misunderstanding between two of my friends. My friends, F and M, were politely disagreeing in real life over some issue. They were respectful to one another. After their discussion had gone on a bit, F said, "We're having a real debate here." M, assuming F would understand the reference, replied, "Yes, F, you ignorant slut, we certainly are." M didn't know that because of her work schedule, F had never seen the skit and didn't understand M was using a line Aykroyd's character used. She slapped him across the face. Story 72. It's too hard to choose, but More Cowbell is a classic. Anything with Debbie Downer, and recently, the skit with Adam Driver as Pete Davidson's father who comes in for career day. Story 73. I loved it whenever Gilda Radner and Bill Murray played the nerdy teens Lisa and Todd. The sketch where Dan Aykroyd showed plumber's crack was side-splittingly funny and shocking for the 1970s. But I think my favorite was when Gilda danced with Steve Martin in a hilarious style to Dancing in the Dark. He hosted again on the night she died and replayed that sketch during his monologue. Story 74. Simma Down Na. The Hurley Boy, Farley/Sandler. Moleculo Conan O'Brien. Here I go. Reporting you to the police, Sandberg Short. Chad. Please don't destroy shorts. Story 75. Donald Glover and Melissa Villasenor try dirty talk in bed. Deep cut but hilarious. Story 76. Office phone call with Kevin Hart. The walk at the end really made me think he had that problem before. Story 77. It is like asking my favorite song. It changes all the time. Recently, I came across a skit that made me laugh in a very dark way. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.